just turns out that these powerful plant protectants, these antioxidants, pigments that are antioxidants, happen to be the most powerful antioxidants for the protection of human beings. So my argument from a defensive eating perspective is that what we understand now is that each of these antioxidants work quite differently. Some are fat soluble, so they will go to places like the brain and the heart. Some are water soluble that we carry around in the blood. They all have a different purpose, and they all do something of value. And so the aim becomes getting as many of them into every meal as possible. And the simple statement is make every meal a rainbow. Now, if you make, in this case, a sauerkraut rainbow, then that benefit of those multiple pigments, multiple antioxidant impact is now magnified fivefold through the fact that you pre-digested it via these organisms that digest it and magnify the benefit of it. So you've got this really, really healthy thing. I had an older gentleman in his 80s or early 80s attend one of my courses at one point where we demonstrated how to do this. Thanks, Sweetie. Where we demonstrated how to do this. And he came back a year later and he said, I went home and I thought, bugger, I'm going to make this stuff. So he made it and he said, my grandchildren, he's got 13 grandchildren. He said, the sickest bunch you ever saw, sit inside playing their games, doing whatever. Every time there's a cold, they're home from school and so forth. And they developed a taste for it. It's really nice. You'll taste it on Friday. And they, every time they come, and he looks after them quite often, they have a little bit of the sauerkraut. Can we have some of that sour stuff, Graemes? And they'd have a bit of that. Hopefully they said please, but probably not. And he said, yes, especially within this remarkable transformation of their health, just this complete transformation. And that's just basically bringing in some good guys into a processed food junk diet and reclaiming the immunity that comes with having that enhanced probiotic system. So we're going to take these multiple colors and we're going to do it in layers, just like we'll teach you tomorrow at the farm when we teach you how to make a compost, how you make it like a layer cake so that you can get the inoculum. And the inoculum, normally, you're going to use salt on each layer. I'll just point that out, and I'll explain why and how as we do it. And normally you use that brine and you basically beat it round a little bit to get some of the juices flowing. And over a 3-week, sometimes longer period, it does the fermentation job. Some people will add a little bit of whey into it to speed that up. What we're doing is fast tracking it with this probiotic that I developed called BioBubble with hundreds of strains. And that really, really fast tracks. So they just go woofing straight into it and digest it. And of course, they've multiplied up. So you've got a super probiotic that you've completed. But so we're going to make our first layer, and we're adding, of course, what we're looking at with that purple color in the cabbage, the red color in the cabbage, is a wonderful substance called anthocyanins, which are also found in grape skins and beetroot and so forth. Hence the need for some, and both the green and the red cabbages contain sulforaphane, which is a very unique phytonutrient that actually causes apoptosis, which means the cells die, apoptosis in cancer cells. So it's a pretty cool substance. So we're going to make a layer about this thick of each. We're going to add some of the multiple carotenes that come with the carrot, and carotenes, of course, some of which turn into vitamin A. Now, here's a really cool little thing for potentially your COVID protection. I suppose most of you are vaccinated, but you know now that doesn't give you any protection because you still get it. But basically, it came from Jerry Brunetti, my great mate, during the bird flu. Now, the bird flu came through Nutri-Tech, and you've never seen anything like it. I mean, you think that COVID is contagious. The bird flu was insane. We got 40 people at that point went for Nutri-Tech, every single one of them. But before it came, Jerry had told me about the study where they basically took 400,000 IUs of vitamin A, which is a full bottle, and vitamin A is fat soluble, so it basically stores in the fat, and it's the most protective substance the human body can use against viruses, and it lasts for 3 months because it's fat soluble. So it's like a 3 months vaccination, basically. But you can't do 400,000 IUs if you're pregnant or you're an alcoholic or you drunk a lot of alcohol and your liver's damaged, because that's a big hit. So I thought, well, why would you need to do it all in one hit? Why not split it over 10 days, because it lasts for 3 months anyway? Why not take 20,000 IUs with 4 tablets, 4 or 5,000 IU tablets in the morning, 20,000 at night, 20,000 in the morning, 10 days, you've got your 400,000, you've got your protection. So I did that. No one else took any notice of me. And the bird flu came. Well, my brother almost died from it. I took him to hospital. He's coughing and spluttering and sweating and, really, really couldn't breathe. And so it was so intense. So I could be sitting in that office someone would say, I'm feeling a bit sweaty. Someone walked in, they didn't cough or anything. That other person who walked in got it. Everyone got it. It was just much more contagious than the COVID thing at the moment. And you know, I'm not saying one swallow a summer makes, but I didn't get it. And so what I'm suggesting to people, and Claudia and I have been doing it again because our 3 months is up, is that you don't necessarily even have to take the large dose of vitamin A in that form of the 10 days. You can do it with carrot juice. A 300 ml glass of fresh carrot juice every day for 2 weeks is 400,000 IUs of vitamin A. So it's not a bad idea to do every 3 months as a protective mechanism. So we'll see how that works, but we'll put a bit of carrot in there, as we mentioned. Parsley is an interesting one, and we're going to put quite a bit of parsley in this. I had a German, 96-year-old German naturopath who attended one of my courses, and we were talking about high blood pressure. And she said, she's quite famous around this region, and she said, look, you need to know what I've discovered with high blood pressure. I've found that, magnesium deficiency is a huge player, which I sort of knew, but kidneys and malfunctioning kidneys are almost as important. And the most powerful known herb for kidneys is parsley. And she said the simple strategy, it's a 2-week strategy, is that you take, maybe this much parsley in a cup, so a decent amount, so you've chopped up a few sprigs, and you pour hot water over it, decent sized cup, and you pour that over it and you leave it for 10 minutes, that's called steeping, and then you drink that parsley tea. And she said in 44% of her high blood pressure patients, they fixed their kidneys and fixed their high blood pressure. That's a pretty good little tip that's certainly worthy of trying. So we're going to put some parsley into this mix and let the biology do that breakdown. We're going to have some spring onions. Now, one of my studies working on a book I was working on prostate health, it was a study that involved 32,000 people, and from memory, I think it was 32 or 33,000 people. And basically, the story was that spring onion a day reduced all forms, not just prostate, one spring onion a day reduced all forms of cancer by 71%. Well, how hard is it to chomp on a spring onion in your salad on a daily basis? So I put a bit of spring onion in there. We're having the red onion, which is significantly better than the white onion. Then the red color, like red carrots, significantly better than just orange carrots if you can get them. Red pawpaw walks all over yellow pawpaw. The lycopene is the red color. Red capsicum, wonderful as a source of lycopene, and that's going to be the next ingredient that we add into the scenario, lycopene being the most protective of phytonutrients relative to prostate health, but for a whole range of other things as well. And we're using this concept of multiple colors with the yellow pigment and the yellow capsicum, and sometimes we even have orange capsicums if we can get them, which they sell for really good money at the moment. It's interesting that the last course that I did just a couple of weeks ago with Sarah over and out from Toowoomba, we were at an organic grower's farm at that thing, and he was talking about, the idea of embracing alternative crops. Just because we're talking antioxidants, I'm going to mention this. And he was saying, like sorghum is major. It's in the top 3 grains of human consumption. No one eats it here. We feed it to chickens or we feed it to cows, but it's actually a wonderful grain. So his wife had made all of these cakes and crackers and all sorts of things from sorghum flour, and they were absolutely delicious. But the interesting thing is that the measure of antioxidant value is called the ORAC score, the ORAC, is oxygen radical absorbency capacity. The higher it is, the better it is for you. And like blueberries are 6,000, apples, good apples are just slightly below that. They're really, really good fruit. But sorghum is 20,000. It's insane. It's this insane antioxidant thing. And you say, why the hell aren't we eating it? Then he talked about black and red sorghum, which are over 30,000. Now, that's a good crop to think about growing. There's a lot of potential there, and sort of thinking outside of the box in terms of niche crops that you might choose to grow if you can get some seed. So we put the green, which of course is chlorophyll, and then we're going to add our herbs and spices. The first of those, the wonderful world's most popular herb. What's the world's most popular herb called? Ginger, actually. Well, you would have thought it was garlic, but it's actually... That's ginger. That is ginger, yeah. The biggest garlic. So we got that from some of our damaged crop from when the storm went through the other day. So we've managed to harvest early because ginger's not ready for harvest yet, but we've got some ginger in there. Ginger, of course, so many compounds. One of them, there's one called gingerol, which is just super anti-inflammatory. It's one of the reasons there's a global shortage of ginger, because everyone's jumped into it as an anti-inflammatory with COVID. But it has another component called shagol, which is the only compound ever researched to kill the cold virus at 1 part per billion. Now, 1 part per billion is a tablespoon of grated ginger with a cup of water, waiting 10 minutes and drinking it. So that's what you do when you get a cold. Just take high-dose vitamin C, take some zinc, and have a tablespoon of ginger tea 3 times a day, and you won't go more than 2 days before the cold's gone. It's really, really effective way to get rid of a cold. So we're going to put some ginger and magnify that impact. We're going to take the wonderful garlic. It's been sitting there for a while, so obviously the active ingredient's been kicked in, and we're going to take a little spice, a little bit of spice on there in the form of chili. Now we've got our first layer. You can see what it looks like. I've mixed it up. I did clean my hands and sterilize them before we did this, in case you're wondering. So now we use the salt. Now the deal with the salt essentially is that lactobacillus like salt, but no other spoilage organisms do. And you want them to kick in and start producing their lactic acid, which is the preserving, like vinegar-like preserving effect of fermented food, before spoilage organisms come in. So hence the salt shuts down everything but lactobacillus, and they go and can do their thing without competition. But always choose a good salt. So what is a good salt? Well, a good salt's not chlorinated, fluoridized, table salt. A salt is quite a lot. It's like a tablespoon, heaped tablespoon of a good salt. This is an Indian mountain salt. It's actually a salt that comes from one range called the Indupu mountain range. In Ayurvedic medicine, which is 3,000-year-old herbal tradition, 23 of their medicines are based on this salt. So I thought when I was in India, I'm going to take this home and check it. Oh my God. For one thing, you taste it yourself. We import it and sell it as Nutri-Salt, and a lot of chefs have discovered it, but taste it yourself. It's the nicest salt you ever ate, and it's the most mineralized salt that you've ever eaten. So it's a wonderful thing in that context. So choose a good salt. I mean, the problem with conventional table salt is that they put an anti-caking agent very commonly with it, an anti-caking agent to reduce the sort of clogging effect that you might have with it, where it cakes up, and salt shakers and so forth. And that anti-caking agent is called aluminium. So aluminium, what you need to know is there's a couple of findings relative to aluminium in recent years. One of them is that aluminium is a really, really big player. There are multiple, there's over 15 studies linking aluminium to Alzheimer's. You don't want aluminium. And you don't want fluoride, because we now know that fluoride triggers aluminium to do its dirty work. That's a relatively new, not new, but 3 or 4 years old finding. So think about your morning routine. You hop out of the shower, you grab your underarm deodorant. Now, one thing you need to know is there's only one known substance that can stop sweat cells from sweating, and that's called aluminium. And so you've got a super soluble form of aluminium that's really well absorbed right next to your breast if you're a woman, and you're poking this aluminium, which has to go right into the sweat cell to shut it down, so it's going right through, no problem. And then, so you've done that first thing in the morning out of the shower, and then you take your fluoridated toothpaste and complete the job. At least you won't remember how you got Alzheimer's. So we've put our salt on there, and now we're going to do our biobubble, which is going to fizz usually. That's not too bad. And we just pour this quite liberally onto that first layer, because that's going to do all the work to do it in a short time. It's quite a lot, but that'll do. And then we repeat the process. So we take our sulforaphane packed cabbage and our anthocyanins packed cabbage, and we take a fair amount of it. I'll take a decent amount this time. We'll make a bit more, so a bit more cabbage dominant. Now, the conventional sauerkraut thing is much, much simpler than this. I've just done my last 3 ingredients again, a little bit of garlic, remembering about the story. So I spoke at I've grown garlic for 4 years now. I spoke at the National Garlic Convention. I just finished this, so I've finished that round. I spoke at 2 states' national garlic conventions, and I thought, well, why are people going to spend $40 or $35 on Australian garlic when they can buy Chinese garlic for $8 a kilo? Why would you spend 4 or 5 times, particularly when you come from New Zealand originally? New Zealand is renowned. There's a lot of cross between Dutch and Scottish people. So you've got the most tight-ass people. You can hear bottoms squeak when they walk down the streets in New Zealand. They're so tight-ass. And so I've got a little bit of that I've tried to fight off in my background. I'm thinking, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just buy the Chinese garlic? And then I researched the Chinese garlic. Oh my goodness. Then I understood, and that's when I started growing garlic. So when you're sending garlic out from China, first thing they do is they bleach it. Remember what I told you about bleach? It's a class 1 carcinogen, it's a dioxin. They want it white, so they bleach it thoroughly. Then they use a substance. It's not malic, it's maleic acid, which is, you Google maleic, EAC, M-A-L-E-A-C, and cancer. And you'll see there's a class 3, it gives cancer to rats in studies. So that stops it from prematurely germinating, so you get longer shelf life. Because, I mean, our garlic that we've harvested, all sitting in the roof, huge amounts of it that I've got to sell, will start sprouting in another month. Well, they want it to last a lot longer, so they use that. Then they irradiate it, because that gives even longer shelf life. And then it comes into Australia and they treat it with methyl bromide. Everything that comes into Australia has got to be treated with methyl bromide. So it's just like this toxic stew. But irradiation kills enzymes. There's no enzymes after irradiation. So understand that when you're buying Russian garlic, yeah, it smells like garlic, but sorry, it's not garlic, because LEase is an enzyme that combines in that 11-minute process I described to create allicin. That's the incredibly profound medicinal compound found in garlic, is not there in the Chinese garlic. The LEase is burnt out through the irradiation. You've got nothing. You've got a piece of toxic shit, to be honest. So sorry about that for the Chinese people amongst us, but that's what you're producing. So back to this salt. A tablespoon of salt, of the lovely mineralized salt on the top, and then our layer of biobubble. We might not quite have enough biobubble because we need to have that whole thing where you can see the visible biobubble on the top of it, as Claudia mentioned. So then we start our layer, but this, you'll taste it, it's really, really nice. I would personally probably added a little more chili to the equation because I like things hot, but most of you probably don't, so that probably works. You know, one of the things when you're choosing crops to grow is to think about what's going to be good to market. A raspberry is a good idea. You've got to pick them every day. The last 2 days you get into market, they've gone moldy. I bought 2 punnets from the market on Saturday. They look fine. The next day they've gone moldy. You know, they've got a real short shelf life. It's a nightmare when you've got that kind of pressure. So you can look for crops that don't involve that kind of pressure. And one of those crops is ginger. Of course, the highest price ever achieved for ginger, $25 a kilo last year during the height of and still at a reasonable price, but not as good. And ginger is a little bit more. Ginger is just a wonderful herb. It's a wonderful flavour, but it is a remarkably healthy herb. And you can leave it in the ground and harvest it when you choose to harvest it. You can harvest it when the price is right. It'll last for months and months when you do harvest it. It is, you know, if you learn how to grow it, I mean, a lot of people have problems with fungal disease, but it's really, really quite simple to grow. It's you'll see it growing out there tomorrow. You use a lot of mulch, and loves mulch, and you'll see how simple it is to produce. And the balance of the herbs and spices in there in one hit, and then I'll just mix it up a bit. And I'll show you how we seal it off at the finish. And like I say, this is the crude dollar bucket from Woolies. One of the things you can do is that you can basically mix it all together. Mix it. You can actually use 2 buckets and sort of mix it all together. That way you can blend it in a blender and mix it. You don't have to do the more laborious things. There's ways that you can fast track its production. So this has become one of our largest, most successful of the human health products. It's kind of life-changing for some people who've got problems with their probiotic organisms. So then we finish this. I've got stuff on one hand, I'll do it with one hand. And so this is, like I said, cheap and nasty, but basically you take that cork, which is just a good heavy-duty plastic bag, and that fills the space, as you can see here, fills the space loosely and forms a cork. And then we can just loosely leave this just sitting like this on top, and then in 3 days it's finished. Then you put it in jars, you put it in the fridge, and you consume a little bit with each evening meal, and it's delicious. It's this a beautiful flavour, this pickled vegetable flavour with all those things in it. In my case, I would like quite a lot more chili in there, but that'll be really nice still. So now you put it usually in a dark place in a pantry or something like that. We'll put it in downstairs somewhere and just leave it sitting. And usually it's just 3 days and it's done, and then you can put it in jars and put it in the fridge, and it lasts maybe 12 months in the fridge, and you can just use it as you choose, and just add it as a couple of tablespoons on your meal. You know, it's a nice little thing that you add with a meal. Thank you.